Greetings and salutations. Thank you for clicking on the video. Today we're going to have some fun and we're going to look at a bunch of commands that you can use in your terminal to get information about your computer and to do all kinds of groovy things. So this video will probably appeal to those of you who are a bit more advanced with Linux. First of all, I want to talk about the EzeeLinux webpage and the fact that the Bash Scripts page is back. For those of you who have not been following along, a while back I posted some scripts here, and I had the idea that I would do them in open text, which means that you could see what was in the script, and if you wanted to use it, you could copy and paste that block of text and put it in your favorite text editor, and then you could do with it what you wanted to. That didn't work out too well. I found out that some of the folks out there, when they would copy and paste because of their browsers or their text editors or whatever the deal was, that some of the characters weren't coming over the way they were supposed to. And I kind of poked at that for a while, and I thought there's a better way to do that. And that is to simply post little zip files that have all of the scripts in them and text files and whatnot. So that's what we have done here now on the new version of the Bash Scripts page. The first thing you're going to see listed is CYA, which is a program that I worked on with Jeremy O'Connell at CyberWeb Solutions. We just did a big video about CYA, and you can come check it out here. CYA has its own web page. It's also on GitHub, and you can click here to get to that page, and you can either clone it on Git or you can download it from Git, and there are links there to do that. So also there's a great big video up about CYA. It's the last Mr. Desktop and Mr. Server. You might want to check that out as well. Also, I put together a little script collection, which is just a bunch of stuff that I've talked about in videos and little tools that I use. Plus, there's a README file that it comes with this that tells you what they do. XBT is here, and you may grab this and use it. A lot of people asking about XBT. Here's where you can get it. You can just grab it and dump the rest of it if you want to. It makes no difference to me what you do with it once you grab it. Now, today we're going to be talking about this file here, which is nothing more than a big long list of commands in a text file. And I went ahead and threw it in a zip file as well, just simply because of the fact that they really don't like you to download text files over the internet. Zip files, fine. Text files, that's a security risk. So you can download the zip here and you can check that out. There's only one file in there, and it's the one we're going to be looking at. And then finally, I have posted the Ubuntu install scripts. I have done videos where I have showed how these work, and these are little scripts that I have written up for myself that just go out and install third-party software, things like Google Chrome, Spotify, Ocean Audio, Simple Screen Recorder for Ubuntu 16.04, hooks up the PPAs and sets up all the repositories. And a lot of people ask about those, so here they are. You can come get them. There are two of them now. One of them is for Ubuntu 16.04 and one of them is for Ubuntu 17.10. And they do work on Linux Mint. The 16.04 script certainly works on Linux Mint. No problems there. And down here we have this disclaimer, and somebody asked about this, and I want to mention it. If you come to this page and you read down here, essentially what this says is if you download any of this stuff and you use it and you bork up your system or you use it for some nefarious purpose, it ain't got nothing to do with me. And one guy said, well, does that mean that if we click on something or we use some of this script and it borks up our system, we're on our own? Essentially, yes, that's exactly what it means. It's like you use this stuff at your own risk. Excuse me, got a little frog in my throat today. So do be careful when you use this stuff and that sort of thing. If you don't understand something, you're looking at it, you might want to do some research before you go off and do that. It's just trying to be super cautious here, and you're going to find that when people share open source software, there's a message like this somewhere, because hey, I'm just sharing it. You do with it what you will. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the file that we're talking about today. I'm not going to show you every single command, but there are a few things that I'm going to walk through here. Some of this stuff is pretty basic. The first one that I throw up here was top, because I realized that I'd never talked about top in any of the videos, and the reason why is because I use a program called htop that I install on every Linux system that I sit down in front of, because htop is a little bit more intuitive and has a few more powerful features than just regular top. Hence the name HTOP, and you know, an enhanced top is what it is. But let's look at top, because top is something you're going to find on every Linux or Unix system you sit down in front of. And top gives you an overview of everything that's going on the computer. You can see here that it shows the uptime. It shows how many users are logged in. It shows what processes are running. It gives you it shows you exactly what the CPUs are doing, all this other stuff. It all shows up here with top. And if your computer's running particularly slow, for instance, this is a quick way to figure out if a program has crashed in the background, because you'll see it sucking up all the memory in the CPU. So that's what this does. Now, the one that I use, and you see in my videos all the time, is called HTOP. And it's in the repositories for most Linux distributions. And it kind of sort of does the same thing, but it's got a lot more features in the background. And that's what it looks like running my computer. And the CPUs are crunching a little bit because I'm capturing HD video, but you get the idea. That's what it looks like. I've talked about HTOP, did a whole video one time on nothing but HTOP, but top is available everywhere you go. So that's definitely one that I wanted to show you. Now, let's see. Well, these are pretty basic commands here, and you can discover them on your own. So, not going to do a whole lot about it, but we'll talk about it as we roll down through here. We have free, which shows you memory. LS block shows you the drives on your machine, all the storage devices. You've seen that in countless videos that I've posted. There is the block ID, BLK sudo, which gives you all kinds of information about the disks. There is the command to show you what the capacity usage is on all of your disks, how much you have available on each partition. That would be DF. And you notice that a lot of these have that H on the end. All that really means is that it's humanly readable. So if you put an H option on a lot of these commands, it'll show you in gigabytes or megabytes or something like that. You can also list all the hardware on your machine, all the connected USB devices. You can find out the day and time. You can print the date. You can print out a calendar. Those become really useful when you're working on a machine that doesn't have a graphic user interface and there's no clock on it anywhere, and you've been staring at this thing forever and you're just curious what time it is. They're also quite useful in scripts, so that's what that's about. Uptime tells you how long your machine has been up. Users tells you who's logged in if you are on a machine that is multi-user based or has an SSH access to the outside world. Very useful. Who am I tells you who you are. Present working directory tells you what directory you're in. And this is one that I'm actually going to show you because I've shown this in a couple of videos over the years, and I always get a comment about it. So let's go ahead and jump in here. I'm going to show you push D and pop D. This is really old Unix, guys. It's been around for a long, long time, and it's a cool little set of commands that does something interesting. So I'm going to show you how it works. So let's say that you're working on your computer and you have jumped into a directory like etc, and let's see, we'll go to the cron.monthly directory, which is where you put scripts that will run monthly if your machine has Anacron set up. So I'm in here and I'm working in this directory. I'm working on a script or something like that, and then suddenly I realize I have to jump somewhere else. Well, I can CD over there. I can do a CD and put a full path in there and go over there, and then I would have to there is a way to jump back to the directory that you were just in. I think it's CD space dash. So that would put me back where I was. But what if I've done this 3 or 4 times? Push D will actually push the directory that you're currently working on a stack. So you can keep pushing and pushing and pushing and go to other places in the file system. And every time that you want to jump back, you use pop D. So let's use push D right now. And we'll go to another directory, and in this case we'll just go to documents. Well, actually I'm going to have to start from scratch because I'm not anywhere near my home directory. So that represents your home directory, and then we're going to jump into documents, and then we're going to jump into scripts. Okay, so we'll do that, and then it tells me that that's where I'm at. So let's say that I'm in here and I need to work on a script that's in here. So you got a whole bunch of stuff here, or grab some stuff out of it, copy it, paste it, whatever we're doing in this particular place. And then I want to get back to where I was. Then I just put in popd and it pops me back to that directory. To get back to your home directory, just put in cd with nothing behind it and it'll automatically take you home. So it's old school Linux, Unix little way to move around the system. And as I said, you can keep putting directories on the stack and you can keep popding back down this imaginary chain of directories that you've created, and that's how you do that. Okay, you can read a text file with the less program. Ifconfig I added in there because this is an old school way of getting information about your network. There is a new one which is like IP space ADDR, which will give you all the IP addresses on the machine. But Ifconfig just lays it out in such a nice way. And this is what I like to use. And see, like if I wanted to look about details about my network, then I could just do that. And it shows me all the networks and how they're set up, and a lot of really good information on there. So let me go ahead and exit that. Well, not exit, but clear the screen. And prepare us for the next command you're going to show. Okay, this is one that I always get comments about. I've shown this about 2 or 3 videos over the years. And it's creating a text file without opening an editor. Not even something as lightweight as VI or Nano or Pico. And this is a really cool little skill to have when you're in a really big hurry to just either create a little text file or you need to add a line to a text file. So I'm going to show you first of all how to create a text file. We're going to use the cat command. The cat command, what it does is it just reads stuff out of text files and sends it somewhere. If you cat a text file, it will show it to you on the screen. If you cat it and then send it to a program or into another file, then it will take a whole bunch of files and put them in there if you want to. So you can look up how cat works. I'm showing you this particular way that cat works. So we have cat. We're going to send it into a text file that we're going to call text.txt. How creative on my part, huh? Now, you see, when I the return key and enter it, we're into the command. Cat is running. It's just waiting for me to type something. So I'm going to put in, hi, I created this file. Enter. Always make sure that you enter. You want to have that carriage return at the end, and I'll show you why. Now, if I do Control D, you see it dumps me back to a prompt. But if I list the storage, you see we now have that file. So let's use cat to look at what's in that file. Hi, I created this file. Now, here's where it gets really useful, because cat will not only create a little text file for you, it will actually add a line to a file. A lot of times when you're reading documentation for something and you want to turn on a feature or you want to change something, it's simply a matter of adding a line to the end of the file. So, for instance, adjusting the swapenos on your computer. That's what you're doing. Well, you can use cat to just add that line at the end and go on with your life. So, let's use the same command once again to add a line to the end. And all we do is just put another bracket there. And when we have 2 brackets together, that tells the system, hey, don't overwrite the file, add this to the end of the file. So we're appending to a file. So now I can put I added another line, enter, always remember enter, and then Control D. And if we go back and we read that file again, you notice we have it there. So that's how that works. Pretty cool, huh? It's a great little skill to have. And when you're flying along and you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, you're administering a system and you need to add this line here and add this line there. I mean, if you're really brave, you can just throw it on the end of the configuration file. Don't create a backup first, nothing. Just, I'm confident I can do that. But be careful, because if you don't remember to put 2 brackets there and you only put 1, it'll overwrite whatever file that is. So it's only for the brave of heart. Let's see, file system commands. These are very useful. So if I would enter sync at the terminal and turn that loose, what does that do? That causes all of the hard drives to get all the data that is sitting in the cache written to them. That's good to know if you're going to pull an external drive off the system. So if you can't unmount it for whatever reason, or you don't want to, or the desktop's not working, but you have a drive on the system. Like for instance, let's say that you have your desktop up and running, you've plugged in your USB drive, desktop crashes, you can't safely remove the drive. If you can get to a terminal and you can type sync, then that will sync all the data. Then you can remove the drive. So that's a good thing to have. Also, it's nice to put at the end of programs that move a lot of data around. So before that program exits, like in a script, then it will say, okay, just write everything to the disks. Just make sure it's there, that sort of thing. FSCK, now that is checking the file system of like a drive, a USB drive that would have, for instance, an ext4 file system. You would unmount the drive, and then you would run FSCK. And force FSCK is a command that will instruct your computer to run a full file system check on all of the drives that automatically connect to the machine at boot up. Now these days with systemd, most systems use systemd. That's something that already happens. It checks the drives and it goes through them, does a real quick check. But if for some reason you don't think it's working, then you can create this little flag file called force FSCK using the touch command. And when the next time the computer boots up, the kernel will see that, and before it mounts the drives, it will check all the file systems. If you have any wondering whether it's working, and it'll just do that and make sure that everything that's supposed to be checked gets checked. So that's what that does. And use the touch command to create that. FS trim commands, if you have SSDs, usually that is completely automated in the background. People ask me all the time, I've just installed Ubuntu and I'm using an SSD. Do I need to do anything to make sure that the SSD is getting trimmed? No, you don't. It's already in the system and you don't have to mess with it. But if you want to do it manually, that is the command. So it would be FS trim, and then you would give it the place where that drive is mounted. Defragging your file system. Now, one of the myths that floats around about Linux is that you never need to run a defrag program. In Windows and NTFS is such a crappy file system that Windows has it set up to run defrag once a week in the background, and people kind of get really obsessive about it. In Linux, because of the way the file systems work, and we're talking about XFS and ext4, they pretty much keep themselves pretty clean. They don't fragment. But there are a couple of exceptions to that. If you have a drive that's really full, and it doesn't have a lot of free space to work with, it's got no choice. It's going to fragment. Or if you're working with really, really big files, like big video files or something like that, those files can get fragmented. And you can defrag an entire drive, a directory, or just a single file. And sometimes that's useful to do. If you have virtual machines is a good example. Sometimes you can increase the performance a little bit on spinning drives by just making sure that those files are all contiguous. So that is E4 defrag, and there are examples here of how to use it. I won't demonstrate it, but you get the idea. And yes, you must be a what's interesting is I put sudo in front of these, but if you are defragmenting a file in your own home directory, let's say like you do have a video file called big file MP4, then you don't need to use the root privileges to do that. It's your file. If you want to defragment it, you go right ahead, knock yourself out. I'll tell you how I use defrag, E4 defrag. When I load up a system, usually what I do is copy a whole bunch of data in there. We're talking gigs and gigs and gigs and gigs of stuff. And I've got videos and virtual machines and big files and little files. And when I dump it onto the drive, I like to, once I get everything all set up, go ahead and run E4 defrag on the whole drive. And that way it kind of gets everything set up. Then after that, it doesn't fragment. Because I use pretty big drives. So I don't worry about it after that. It's not something that you have to do monthly. It's not something that you even have to do yearly. I've had systems run for 3-4 years, and you can use the E4 defrag command to check the fragmentation level. It's still at 0. that's just because ext4 rocks. It's a good file system. Okay, another one I wanted to talk about here is tunetoFS, which is a command that you can change a lot of parameters about your file system. And here, what I'm using it to do is make it so that I get more free space on the drive. So pretty much by default, when you format a drive with ext4, it sets aside 5% of the space on the drive for the root user. And that's an emergency thing. What happens with that is that if for some reason a program goes crazy and starts sucking up all of the space on the drive, that makes it so that you can actually still use the drive. You can boot the drive and the root user can write to it to make sure that the system can run even if the drive is totally slam-packed full. But on really big drives, and we're talking about anything over like 50 gigabytes, it is very safe to drop that percentage down to 1. So that's exactly what that does. Oh, it's my ride. I'm not done with the video yet, guys. You'll have to wait. So anyway, that's what that command does. Now here's another one that we have here. We can adjust swapenos for better performance. And this is one that I'm going to actually demonstrate for you so you can see how it works. So what is swapenos? Swapenos is the tendency of your computer or your the kernel, actually the Linux kernel itself, we're dealing with the kernel, to swap out memory to the hard drive. When you set up your Linux system, it either creates a swap partition or a swap file. And once your physical RAM starts getting full, like you have a bunch of programs running, you're running a big game or something like that, when it starts getting full, at some point it goes, hey, I better take some of this and swap it to the swap space. And I mean, even if you've got 32 gigabytes of RAM in your computer, and you have just a 2 gigabyte swap space, you may see it start to swap because the kernel sometimes makes a decision and it goes, I better swap this out. I want to stick this over here because I want to do something else in the memory. That's why it's always important to have swap, gang. I know some folks out there, they go, I got 32 gigs of RAM and I don't need no swap. You need a little bit of swap. But you can control to some extent at what threshold the kernel starts swapping by adjusting the swapenos. So Ubuntu, Linux Mint, they always ship with a swapenos of 60. What we want to see is what the swapenos is on this machine. So I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to just paste that in there. By the way, I use the center click, which is the scroll key, to do that. You highlight something somewhere, and then you use the center key, and it will just make it show up. So let's see what the swapenos is set to on this computer. Well, you see I've set it to 10 now, haven't I? That means that this machine is going to use a whole lot of the physical memory before it starts swapping things out. Some people put it this way. They say, okay, whatever the number is the percentage of memory that has to be available before the machine starts swapping. That's not really exactly how it works, but it's actually not a bad way to think of it. So in this case, this machine would have to use 90% of the memory before it would start creating allocating swap space. It doesn't really necessarily work that way. And some programs, by the way, they want to use the swap partition independently of the kernel. Got to have some swap in there, gang. Just a little bit. Even if you got 64 gigabytes of RAM, create a little 2 gigabyte swap space for the kernel to work with. You'll have a much more stable system. So that's what swapenos does. You can adjust swapenos. I've talked about in the past videos. Now there are two ways to do that. I've got this lovely command here that if you copy and paste this and you put it in your terminal and turn it loose, it just throws the correct text at the end of this file, which is the sysctlconf file. That file right there is the configuration file for the Linux kernel, one of them. And what that does is if it sees that at the end, it readjusts the swapenos. Also, I have step-by-step instructions on how to add that line to the end of the file. So it's right there. And finally, just for fun, we threw in the cleanup commands for Debian and Ubuntu systems. This is if you are using something that uses apt. So that would be any Debian-based system, any Ubuntu-based system that uses the apt tool to manage packages. And so the first one is sudo apt auto remove. So what that does, I'll go ahead and run it. What this does is it goes through your system and it looks to see if there are any programs that are installed that you don't need. Sometimes when a program is installed on the computer, it'll say, well, I need this program, and this program to run. Those are called dependencies. Well, you may uninstall that program, and for whatever reason, those dependencies do not get uninstalled. They're just taking up space at this point. They're not doing you any good, because when I say programs, we're not necessarily talking about ones that have icons in the menu that you can click on. Sometimes programs pull down utilities that only they use, and they'll get stuck on your computer. So that's how you can get rid of them right there. Now, the auto clean and clean commands. So if I do sudo apt, make sure I get that in there. Hello, man, you just messed that up good. Sudo apt auto clean. Put the space in, man. What's the matter with you? There we go. Got it right. What that's going to do is it's going to go through the apt cache. When you install programs on your computer, when you run updates on your computer, it pulls down the packages that it needs and it throws it into a directory under var where it hangs on to all the packages that it's downloaded. And that makes it so if you ever have to reinstall, it doesn't have to go out to the internet to get it. So it's kind of cool. It makes things go faster, right? However, the apt cache will just fill up and fill up and fill up. So if you auto clean the cache, what it will essentially do is get rid of old versions of stuff that are no longer necessary. So for instance, let's say that you install Google Chrome and you download it and then you update it once. So now in your cache you've got the latest version and then you've got the version before that. Now if it updates again in the cache, you will actually have 3 of them. So you will have the latest, the one before that, and then a really old one. What this will do is it'll go through and get rid of that really old one. So it just keeps the cache in a nice size, and it pretty much reflects whatever you have on the machine. Now, if you just do clean, which I really don't recommend that you do, it just dumps everything out of the cache completely, which means that every time that you need to re-download something that you've already downloaded package-wise, then it'll have to go out to the internet to get it. So what I actually do is I have created a little script called up, and this automatically updates my systems, and it runs the auto clean command at the end, auto remove and auto clean. It'll get rid of those and kind of clean things up a little bit. And then I also have the system set up to go out once a month and just make sure that there isn't anything in the apt cache. And then it will do the, not clean it, but do the auto clean. So I'm a little bit crazy about that because I just don't like the idea of having those old packages taking up space. And a lot of the systems that I administer, I do it where I'm not sitting in front of the system. Like for instance, some clients that I have, I've got it set up where all of this just takes care of itself. They just install the updates and they just rock along, and in the background their cache isn't growing and taking up the system partition using those little commands. So I thought I would share that here as well, and that is it. That's what I've got in my little file that I'm sharing with you. These are all little useful things, and I hope you found this video interesting. Thank you for watching it. I certainly do appreciate it. Check out EzeeLinux on the web. Check out EzeeLinux on Facebook. There will be links to EzeeLinux below, and then you can just click on the bash script page there. Also check out freedompenguin.com for lots of great stories about Linux and videos and all kinds of content. And you're going to be seeing more of my videos that will appear there at freedompenguin.com. So make sure that you bookmark that. And that is a kind of a clearinghouse for a lot of really cool information about using Linux. So check that out. Links in the description. I'm out.